Thanks for joining the final part of our amazing chat with Ryan Allen. Enjoy. All right, so let's talk about your podcast.
Sure.
Where did the concept for You Probably Never Heard of Me come from?
I have been toying with doing a podcast for a long time and just kept talking myself out of it, for whatever reason. I actually had a completely different concept for one when I was starting to think about doing it, which was, of course, during COVID when everybody started a podcast. And so I was part of it was like, well, everyone's starting a podcast, so I don't also need to be a podcast person while, we're all just like locked in our houses. So I sort of talked myself out of doing that. And then, of course, the world has been whirling. And I keep coming back to some of these like concepts of connection, friendship, all this stuff. And decided first it was more like, I'm going to do a Substack. And I went to school for journalism, and some of my first jobs were writing for different like publications and stuff. And I've always loved being a writer, and, kind of have gotten away from it, and then I had this guy who does this like music magazine, reach out to me and ask me to write some articles for it. And kind of was like, and I said yes. And I had done like 3 or 4 of them. And it was just like so fun to write again. So I was like, well, I kind of missed this. So let me turn this into like a Substack thing and like do some long form writing. And then Substack released like a component to it where you could do a podcast through the app. And one of the things that I kind of always shied away from when I started thinking about doing a podcast was like, I just don't want to deal with all the like extra stuff you got to do. I want to make the social stuff, and I don't know why, because I can do all that stuff if I want to or if I needed to, but I just felt like, I don't know, it just was going to like take too much time or something. So when I realized that you could like very easily record a podcast in the Substack platform, which this is not a advertisement for Substack, by the way, it's just the thing that like made it possible, I guess, for me. I was like, well, let me try one. Like, and I'd been working on some stuff with this guy, Robbie, who lives in Canada. He like mixed some songs for me, and he actually did it for free, which was very kind of him. Shout out Robbie. But we were like trying to think of ways to like promote the stuff that we had done. And I was like feeling kind of bad that like I didn't pay him for it, the mixing. He mixed like 3 songs for me. And I was like, well, what if we just like do an Instagram live together and just talk, about the recording, and, I can like expose you to some of the people who might follow me or like, recommend you to people or whatever. And I was like, well, maybe instead of an Instagram live, which seems like maybe like a thing people don't do as much anymore, unless you're like a journalist or something. I was like, well, let me try doing it through Substack. And so we recorded an episode, and it was awesome. I really enjoyed doing it. I've always been on like this end of it,
Yeah.
But I went to school for journalism, like I've said, and I used to interview people all the time. And like at my day job, one of the things I do is like new business stuff. And so I'm like meeting potential new clients, and that's kind of an interview,
Oh, for sure.
And so I was just like, I can do this. And so, yeah, we did an episode, and I thought it turned out cool, and kind of got bit by the bug. And so, yeah, now I've done like, I just recorded one this week. It'll be my 8th one. So yeah, it's the whole idea of it is to put a spotlight on, creatives, musicians, artists, what have you, that I think deserve more attention. And so not that I have like a gigantic audience at all, but I do like the sort of idea of, even if I turn one person onto this thing that they wouldn't have heard without me talking about it, then I feel like I'm like paying something forward, you know?
Yeah.
And doing what other people have been able to do for me, in a way. But also just like having, like, I'm really enjoying this conversation. We don't know each other at all.
Yeah.
You know, but
Likewise.
like been sitting here talking for like 2 hours, and I think there's something so like intoxicating almost about like conversation.
Yeah.
Where it just kind of, if it's flowing and it's going and, you know, whatever, like you kind of lose track of time, you know, and man, anything besides sitting around looking at my phone all the time.
Oh God.
I'm going to want to do,
worst.
even though I look at my phone all the time and definitely struggle with that. But yeah, it's just, it goes back to this again, like the idea of connection, friendship, you know, having conversations, like, but also, like I said, like it's called You've Probably Never Heard of Me, which is, you know, a joke in of itself, like me acknowledging my own obscurity, you know, but also like just like trying to like I could have probably, like I could reach out to people that I've met through like my music life that people probably know maybe a little bit more potentially. But I like the idea of talking to like I just talked to my friend Joe, who plays in a band called Touch the Clouds that we play with a lot. And they're so good. And, you know, same kind of deal with me, like in their 40s and have kids and like day jobs and all this stuff that like they can't just like drop everything and go on tour and try to be rock stars. But they're great, and Joe's great, and Joe has a great story. And so that's kind of like what the whole thing was about, to just put a spotlight on people that I think deserve more attention.
Yeah, and I listened to a couple of the episodes. One was,
thanks.
He had a really cool name. I can't remember it offhand. It was one of the more recent ones, I think, where I think he was a good guitar player, musician. What was his name?
Was Chris Hatfield? Now I got to look at the episodes.
Yeah, and I think was the more recent one, or at least it was at the top, was the record label.
Yeah,
that was a cool one too.
Yep.
Yeah, that was because
awesome.
it's one of those things like you mentioned. Like, who would ever? I mean, not really care, but who would?
Oh, you're talking about Craig Benedict Valentine.
Yes, yeah, that was that was a fun interview.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah.
Craig is awesome. He's just like a really great conversationalist too.
Yeah,
great storyteller.
Yeah. And that was, like you said, a storyteller. So it was really engaging listening to all the stories he had. But the record label, I would never think to even, I mean, I don't want to sound cold, but even care about what a record label does necessarily. It's just as long as they're producing the end product. Yeah. But it was interesting to hear their story. You know, kind of, it was so DIY. It was just, it just was ridiculously impressive.
I mean, that's where I come from. You know, I come from like a punk DIY background, you know, like playing house shows and playing BFW halls and playing in the street, you know, or like playing, you know, the dingy, crappy places. And like, you know, like in my world, like record labels have been like hugely important, you know, and like I got like so into certain bands because I like, you know, liked the label, you know, which seems like weird, you know.
And you start hunting and picking
you go through the catalog and you start to discover things, and, you know, like it's all like an ecosystem, right? And so, like those guys, Jake and Luke, who run Setterwind, who put out all of the music from all of my bands now, they're just so cool and like supportive, and like they're doing a business, you know, like they're not making money necessarily out of it, but they don't care. It's not about that. It's about supporting people, giving people, even just like slapping the, you know, the logo on the back of your album. Yeah. You know, it like makes you feel part of something, I guess. So yeah, and that's kind of like what I'm trying to kind of cultivate in a way is like Craig doesn't know who the guys from Setterwind Records are, right?
Yeah.
Like, Robbie, who I've interviewed in my first episode, he doesn't know who Joe from Touch the Clouds is, but I know all of these people. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And I tend to talk to people who I don't know too. Like I didn't know Robbie until I met him, I guess, like through him reaching out to me actually to mix some songs. But like, I don't know, like that kind of like, it's kind of like Big Life was like, nobody knew each other, but they all knew me,
Yeah.
And then like, all became friends with each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like where like other, two of the guys will go and do something together without me. Like I don't need to be there.
Right.
Because they all knew me first. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that connectivity of things. And I feel like, I'm very interested in this kind of like idea of, this like orbiting, not, it's going to sound so stupid maybe, but like what I'm interested in, the people I know are not always like the same types of, like, they're not all doing the same exact thing.
Right.
But I can sort of like, I feel like they're orbiting around me. I'm orbiting around them. And I don't know, there's just something like kind of like cool around that kind of idea or concept to me. So
yeah,
that's why I'm doing it.
Nice. The one thing I kind of picked up from the podcast, it's at least for me, I mean, this is the first time we're really meeting. I think we briefly talked during Pride, but it just, the podcast seems like it adds a new dimension to you as part of the music industry.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting, kind of looking at it that way as well. It's not just a story about these two. Yeah.
I've always felt like that because when Thunderbirds were going, I also I was writing about music and interviewing bands and stuff at the same kind of time. And it was weird kind of because we were starting to get reviews and things like that. And like they would get things wrong. And I was like extra annoyed because I also was a writer.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, check your facts, because like that's something that I learned and, by, in college and when I was, majoring in journalism was like how important those things are. And so it always pissed me off when people got shit wrong. Cause I'm like, this information is available.
Yeah.
It's not like secret.
Yeah.
And you're just not paying attention. And that stuff would always bother me.
Yeah.
And so like, I feel like, I don't know, there's like the age old criticism. Like if you get a bad review, it's like, well, let me hear your band, Oh, you don't have one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Like, how can you criticize or critique my thing when you've never written a song in your life? And so like, I like the idea of being on both sides of the kind of like coin, where it's like, yes, I've been interviewed on podcasts and like for magazines and things over my life, which I'm very grateful for and think is, it's always cool to do.
Yeah.
But I also feel like if you can also facilitate that for somebody else who might not otherwise get that opportunity or something, why not? So that's kind of my kind of like thing with it too.
Yeah, and then on your Substack, you yourself mentioned doing some long form writing. Is that mostly kind of journalistic, or do you do some creative writing as well?
Yeah, it's most. I mean, I view my writing as creative as much as it is like, sort of journalistic, like journalism centric or focused, I guess. But like I've done a couple of things. Like I wrote this really long article about Michigan pop bands starting like from the 60s to basically now. So it was like investigative in terms of like having to like research and stuff, but like the way that I write is like kind of like a little, tongue-in-cheek and sarcastic and stuff. So it's got a creative like slant to it, I guess.
Yep. And just kind of another common thread I'm finding in another interview that was done was with Jason. He was kind of in the comedy world, and he's written books, so he's done the same thing where he's had to do a lot of research and interview people to be able to write a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just,
I like being on both sides. I think it's interesting, and I'm such a fan of creativity. That like to just like bottle it into one thing seems like not enough for me, and I'm so glad that I've done it, and I don't know how long I'll do it. I might lose interest in it, or there might be things that happen, that prevent me from being able to do it, but I'm really enjoying it right now. And I'm excited to do it. And, if it grows, a little bit, cool. If it never, if it just remains like a handful of friends saying like, oh yeah, I checked it. I listened to some of it,
Yeah.
I'm also fine with that. Like, I'm not doing it for anybody else really. I mean, I'm doing it maybe for the person I'm talking to, I guess, a little bit, in terms of like, again, like I said, if I can like turn one person on to something that they might not have heard unless they heard the podcast.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But I'm sort of selfishly also doing it for myself because I want to, like have these conversations with people.
Yeah, I mean, same here. That's a big part of what we're doing,
Yeah.
and I get to play with all these audio recording toys. I finished audio engineering school back in the 90s, so it's just like I was into that industry for a while, and then just got burned out on it, and then life took over, and I've held on to a lot of the stuff and get to play with new toys, and it's always fun.
Hey man, life is short and weird, and you have to find joy. And and I think sometimes right now it feels hard, but like this podcast that I'm doing is bringing me joy, and so
fantastic.
I'm riding the wave.
Perfect. All right, so we'll get into some, I guess, personal stuff. So let's say outside of like kind of growing up with a musician father who sparked that musicianship in you, what are some other memories that you have from childhood that kind of also I guess brought out some creativity in you?
Yeah. I was real into sports. As a kid, I played soccer, I played baseball, I played basketball. I love basketball still. My son plays basketball, and I love watching him play. And I love yelling at the TV, watching professional basketball, and stressing out about it, and whatever. So sports was like a big part of my childhood. A lot of my memories of like family stuff would be like going to like road trips down to Florida. Like my grandparents both one lived in Florida full time when I was, pretty young, and my other grandparents lived there like kind of half, snowbird style. But, going down there and like staying at their condos and, going to Walmart and stuff, like, which was like a novelty at the time. Now I probably would never step foot in a Walmart, but back in 1987, it was like, what's a Walmart, or maybe it was like 1990. But anyway, that kind of thing. I mean, I did like all the regular kid stuff. I was a very cautious kid. Like, I will say that. And I was like, I would not have been able to diagnose was maybe the wrong word, but I wouldn't have been able to articulate it back then, but I was very introverted. And so there would be things that I just would not do, like I remember my cousin, won this contest one winter that was like, didn't have a lot of snow. And like he won this like contest where they like brought like snow from the ice rink and like dumped it on his front lawn and made this like snow mountain. And then like my parents took me over there, and all the neighborhood kids came, and like the news was there and stuff. And like I remember all these kids like climbing on this snow mountain, and I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going up there. I don't want to be hurt, So I was like very cautious and kind of shy in a way, but I got like really into comic books when I was a kid, and a lot of my like memories of like being, like before you could drive, riding your bike around would be like riding my bike up to the comic book store, and buying comics, and like, becoming friendly with like the guys who own the comic store. And they were like, they like took us under their wing and showed us cool things. That was the guy that I bought my like first real guitar from, like cool. Something like that. And yeah, just, like Livonia, where I grew up, was like, very suburban, typical kind of, like Midwest place, like,
Yeah.
but, playing pickup basketball. We watch Saturday Night Live a lot,
Oh, yeah.
with like quote Saturday Night Live skits to my friends and I, like the next day, after we stayed up till 1 a.m. or whatever to watch it. And yeah, like, I will say, like, so I have a younger brother, and, he's 4 years younger than me. And, I have a lot of great memories of being super young, like, or whatever, but we, kind of then weren't friends for a while, and then became friends, and then ended up playing music together, so my brother's always been a really wonderful presence in my life. And my mom is incredible. My mom is like everybody's mom, like when, like, we were young, like our house was the house that everybody came over to. My mom would make brownies for us. She would, she was like always there for me and my brother, and, just like making sure we were okay, and, just allowing my friends to come over and, trash the house and stuff, so yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, like, well, I guess I didn't say this earlier. I was going to say, we had the music stuff in the basement, but I was also really into drawing. I was really, like I said, I was into comics. I love to draw. And one of my favorite things to do would be to draw in my room by myself, like drawing, reading Spin magazine, making mixtapes, like spending a lot of time in my room alone. That was like a thing I did all the time.
Yeah, it's exactly like our daughter, and she loves to draw, spend time alone in her room drawing.
Yeah.
So it seems like hopefully she'll turn out.
It's all like it's all a learning process, and if you are drawn to the arts and you are creative, I mean, it expands your mind,
Yeah.
And I think that, like, I feel like, this whole time I've kind of been dancing around certain, like, political topics that, haven't,
It's hard, like, to avoid,
gone deep into or anything. But I will say that I do feel like I feel bad for people who don't have an appreciation for the arts, because I feel like it boxes you in to an ideology that is closed off to a lot of things. But if you open your mind to art, film, music, books.
I would throw travel in there too.
Yeah, even that, where you're, learning about plants or birds or whatever.
Yeah, just any information is...
You're going to be more of an open person.
Yeah.
And I feel like I don't understand people who aren't like that, It's a weird... That is a thing for me. Like, it's harder for me to connect with people who are not creative in some way. That's why Jodi and I, that's not like the basis of our relationship at all, but Jodi, who I know, was a guest on your podcast, is my wife. She owns Jodi Lynn's Emporium of Doodles. And
I love the name of her shop, by the way.
She's the best, she's so creative, but we connect over that, deeply. And it's wonderful.
Yeah. The same thing with, like, Zoe and I, when we met, it was definitely there was a lot of creativity there. Yeah. And it was just so easy to connect with her. And, I think, the creativity, after, just, I guess, being in a region of the U.S. that is less creative, let's just kind of leave it there. You just kind of get numb to that. And I think that was a big part of why we just kind of picked up and moved here, Yeah. I mean, neither of us have family here in Detroit, but, I have, like, like cousins and everything, like Milwaukee, Chicago, Cleveland. So it seemed like a good place to be there. Yeah. I was born in Cleveland, and we moved to California when I was like 12 or 13 or something. So there's that connection there. But when we visited here as a potential place to move, it was just like this weird creative vibe, like anywhere we went, really. Like it's just something we didn't experience since we our story together began when, in Belgrade, Serbia, where we met.
Okay.
And that was very similar. Like, it's this big urban center with just tons of creative things happening.
Sure.
So,
Well, creativity, or like, when you're talking to other creative people, there's a certain language that, like, I feel like I was talking to my friend Joe the other day about their band, and when we were doing the podcast, and I was like saying, like, if I was to describe your band or your music to somebody, like, I could reference other bands, but also I feel like there's other descriptions I could use that are almost more visual. For example, like you sound like a broad stroke painting, or something like that. Or, there's like there's an aspect to it that is, it makes you feel like the band's called Touch the Clouds, and they literally sound like you are floating in the clouds sometimes, and it's like giving you this like visual representation of an audio thing, a thing that's not necessarily visual. But there's a language that you can apply when you're talking to creative people about anything really, but especially about creativity, that just brings you together. Like Jodi and I, like, I understand what she does to do what she does, because I do the same thing. It's a different medium, but it really is no different. There's like a sketch kind of aspect to it first, where you're just kind of starting to like play around with the ideas and figure out how these things fit together, and then you start to figure it out, and then you start to fill it in with more color and more depth and all these things. And like, we can talk about that in such a natural, organic, easy way. It makes us so close, in a way that I'm so thankful for, So I feel like, having that like common language is really powerful.
Yeah, and the common language, and it just, I don't know, it adds just these different dimensions to a relationship, as opposed to just, I guess, without creativity, I feel relationships are almost just transactional then. And
yeah, they can be.
And it just, I guess for some people maybe that works, but
and
not for me really.
When I think you have to have, there's always going to be people in your life that the relationship is very transactional, because that's just sort of the nature of it, and I don't think that that's bad, at all.
Yeah.
If you only talk to creative people, you don't, you're also like siphoning yourself off from having other experiences too, right? And so, there's room for everything and everyone, in my opinion. But I think that like, sometimes like we don't even have to talk, and I just know, like, like she's been drawing all day and she's tired, 'cause it's like such a focused thing. Or, we could talk about, what it feels like to be trying to get people to sort of like pick up on what you're doing. Like, we just, it's very, like, bonding, and we understand each other, in a way that like I don't want to say like in a way I've never understood other people, because that wouldn't be fair to other people in my life, but like, man, like
every relationship,
it's so special and so cool, and so it's so important to me, like she is so important to me, and I don't know what I would do without her, man. Like, but like on the flip side, like we don't really like the same kind of music, like when I hear her talk about Big Life, like she doesn't have the language always for it. She's like, they're like, I don't know, metal or something. And it's not really, but like, it's just funny to hear like that side of her brain work.
Yeah.
But, I could talk about her all day long. She's the best. I'm a lucky guy.
Yeah, and then I guess that was going to be the next part of
What a segue.
Yeah, perfect. So I guess how did you meet, and how did that all start and lead to where you are today?
Yeah, so Jodi and I have known each other for a very long time. She was friends with my brother. They're around the same age, so they became friends in high school in a town called Plymouth. Where they hung out at like a coffee shop kind of together and just became friends, as you do sometimes as a kid. You just are like, that person might be cool and I'm going to talk to them, And so Jodi and my brother were friends, and Jodi actually has a memory that I don't have of her and me and my brother driving around in the car. So around this time I was going to college. So I was not living at my parents' house. So I would come home sometimes. But she claims to have a memory of me and her and my brother driving around in a car, listening to the B-52's Rock Lobster on repeat over and over and over again. Which I wish I remembered, because that sounds like a really cool, funny, weird memory.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing her around, and, I'd come home sometimes and she'd be hanging out in the basement with my brother. And, I was, like I said, I'm an introvert. So like, I wasn't like, hey, what's up? My name's Ryan. Like I was just like, hey, and then I kind of go off and do my thing. But then fast forward, like whatever, this would have been like when I was like 20, fast forward like 10 years or so. And we end up working together at the Apple store.
Oh, wow.
And so she worked at a different Apple store and then transferred to the one that I worked at. And, she walks in or whatever, and I'm like, I know her, like I know her from like back in the day, like, she's friends with my brother Scott, and so, we just kind of, like we grew up in the, like similar areas and know some of the same people, and like that was a weird job, like there was a lot of people like were like really into computers, and I was not one of those people.
Yeah.
So it was hard to find people to like connect with or whatever. But Jodi and I, one of our favorite things to do when we worked at the Apple store together, was to make fun of people who walked into the Apple store together under our breath. So someone would walk in and I was like, look at this fucking guy, or like we used to play mom or nanny, where you would like guess who was the mom and who was like the nanny. But just like, we would make crack jokes, and, we were just pals, and I was married at the time to my son's mom, so we were just friends, like whatever. And then we kind of like, she stopped working there, and we kind of like weren't as connected anymore. But I would see her because she was starting to do art fairs and stuff, and in the summertime, especially, art fairs are huge in Michigan.
Yeah.
There's a fair called the DIY Street Fair that happens in Ferndale that she would do, and I would always go to her play sometimes. And, so we like orbited in the same circles.
Yeah.
And I always like, even though we didn't really talk anymore and we weren't really friends, I was always like impressed with her artwork and her like business, kind of like I could tell it was like, oh, like she's doing this for real, you know? And as somebody who was like doing music in my mind for real too, like I respect people like that, like I am so blown away whenever I go to the, there's an art fair during the holidays called the Detroit Urban Craft Fair, and it takes place at the Masonic Temple downtown. And Jodi's always in it every single year, and it's a really cool art fair. Going to buy like gifts for the holidays and stuff. And I'm always so like impressed and blown away by the artists there, because I know what it takes to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually probably know a fraction of it, quite honestly, because Jodi's got hundreds of, art pieces that she's created over the years. I guess I have hundreds of songs, but still, I can write a song in 5 minutes. She can't draw a drawing in 5 minutes necessarily. So anyway, fast forward to 2019. Yes, 2019. I was getting a divorce. And I had been sober for 2 years at that point. So now I've been sober for, well, I love weed, but I have not drank alcohol in 9 years now. But at this point, it had been a couple years. And I think I posted like something on Facebook saying like, you know, I'm 2 years sober, blah, 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 you know, whatever I wrote. And Jodi and I were Facebook friends at the time, but we weren't really like in real life friends, you know?
Yeah.
And she commented on my post and said something along the lines of like, you know, being sober is awesome or something like that. And I was going through a really rough time, you know, and I was not living at my house anymore. And it was just a very strange like time in my life. And when she commented on the post, I was like, oh, like immediate, like, you know, I was just like, Jodi, she's cool, man. You know, like that. I just remember thinking like, oh, that's cool. Jodi commented on this post or whatever. But then I sort of like thought about it and I was like, oh, I wonder if she's also sober. Like if she's saying that, maybe she is, right? Yeah. And I knew she was creative and doing her art and all that stuff. And I think at the time I was just kind of like sort of free falling and not sure of what I was doing, you know, but I felt this like, I don't know where it came from. Just this like push from the universe to reach out to her, you know? And so I did. And so I sent her a message and I was like, hey, do you not drink? And she's like, no, I actually have been sober for a year. This is like maybe on a Monday. She's like, this Friday, I'm celebrating my 1 year. I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. You know, like, congratulations, you know, whatever. Yeah. Like, I was like, you know, we should like catch up sometime, you know, cause we were like pretty good friends for a minute, you know, and really enjoyed each other's company and got along great, you know? And she was like, okay. Like at this time, nobody really knew that I was like getting a divorce.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I hadn't like broadcast it on the internet or anything like that. And I think for her, she was like, why is this married guy asking me to hang out? You know?
Yeah.
But she said, yeah, sure. You know, like, okay, you know? And so I was like, all right, you know, like, how about like this weekend, you know? And she's like, yeah, I guess, you know? And so I think over the course of the week, you know, from like the initial conversation to like actually hanging out, we had like talked a little bit here and there. And it, like, I was like, well, I should tell you, like, I'm going through a divorce and this and that. And I'm not like looking necessarily to get into a relationship, but I just think, you know, it would be fun to like hang out as two like sober, creative people, you know? And so I ended up going to her place. She lived in Hamtramck at the time. And I brought 2 cases of sparkling water. And I mean, as soon as I opened the door, I just felt like so at home. I just felt so comfortable. You know, it's like a familiar face. Yeah. You know,
but especially like when you're going through so much.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
very comforting.
And you know, it was just. I mean, I'm like trying not to make it sound like so cinematic or like a movie or anything like that, but like it really, I felt like this like moment of just like this, what you're doing right now, as much as you are like second guessing it and thinking maybe you shouldn't be doing this. Cause I had like dated a couple people like very briefly, you know, great, nice people, you know, but it just like felt like maybe I shouldn't be. Yeah. You know, so I was kind of like not really thinking about this as like I'm going over here to like get a girlfriend. You know, I was just like, right. I just wanted to like see someone who I like got along with once and like have a conversation or whatever.
Yeah.
But man, I tell you what, like, it was like pretty much like, it wasn't like we like began making out immediately when I walked through the door or something weird, but I just felt so comfortable.
That's a different
around
kind
her.
of cinematic
Yeah,
moment.
exactly.
Yeah.
I felt very comfortable around her, and that was it, man. Like that night we got Indian food and we stayed up late talking, and it was just like, it was awesome. We've been doing that pretty much every day since then.
Cool.
So.
And I literally had a question about how the universe brought you two together.
Yeah.
You mentioned the universe.
I mean, there was something about it, that like, again, like I think like I was like, my sort of mentality at the time was like, I'm still sort of newly sober. It's just like my second year of doing it, and like feeling it out still. Like I was very committed to it. Like once I quit drinking, I had not had a sip since, but like I was still like, there was things that I felt like I was still doing for the first time, not drinking,
Yeah.
So the idea of like even though it wasn't a date, like the idea of like doing something like that, even without alcohol involved, was always a little bit awkward. And it made me feel less so because she didn't drink too. So it just removed that whole like, I mean, we still talked about it, but from a totally different perspective, more of a like, how is it going for you? And it was actually her 1 year sober-versary that we hung out for the first time. So like our dating anniversary, it's weird. It's like, there's this week in March where it's like I quit drinking. Like my sober-versary is that week. Hers is the same week. And then our like dating anniversary is also the same week, which happens to also be the same day as her sober-versary, which also is weird because I have two more things to say. One is that she told me that one of the things that helped her like decide to quit drinking was listening to me on a podcast that was about being a sober creative person. Like that was like the premise of the podcast. It's not, they don't do it anymore, but it was called Suburbia. And it was all about like talking about your sobriety and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was a guest on it at one point. My friends Gabe and oh my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting her name. I'll remember it. Sorry. But she said she listened to that, and that it like was like, oh, well, if that guy can do it, I can do it. If that drunk ass can do it, why not me? So that's kind of like a cool thing too. And actually, weirdly, there's a one last story I think is kind of cool. So we worked at the Apple Store together at the same time, like I said. And one of the things that we would both do was like, we were trainers there. And so we would train customers on how to use their Macs or iPhones or whatever. And there was this woman who was like a frequent like customer who would come in, who was a psychic. And Jodi was doing like a training lesson with her one day. And they were talking about something, and she said something like, oh, well, your husband over there, like in reference to me.
Uh-huh.
And this is, I was married at the time, and I didn't know this at all. She told me the story much later in life. But she was like, oh, that's not my husband. He's married to somebody, like, no, we're just friends, I might have like talked to her or did something to like put me on the psychic's radar maybe.
Yeah.
But she's like, well, he's not your husband now, but one day he will be.
Oh, she said that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And she's like, no, what are you talking about? He's married. He's got a kid, whatever. And she's like, no, one day the two of you are going to be together.
Wow. That's wild.
And we are. I don't, I wasn't there. I didn't observe this. This has been told to me. But I do think that I have to believe that I'm not like a spiritual person or a religious person, but I do believe in like energy. I believe in like, the universe kind of having a say, or like doing things happening for a reason, it's just been proven to me over and over again in life, from the time that I threw a fit and said, I don't want to be Mr. Mushnick and my high school production of Little Shop of Horrors, and then did it anyway and learned, kind of in a roundabout way about humility and, rejection and, getting over something or whatever. Like, I'm not saying this as like, this is a unique to me thing by any means, but, as hard as some of those things are and were, it brought me to her. You know what I mean? And
and like 100% understand.
Her and Emmett, my son, are super tight. And I believe she's been like an incredible influence on his life. And so and my parents love her, and it's just, dude, it's. I feel like the universe was like, we got to get this guy. We got to get this guy's back for a real quick second here.
Yeah.
And boy did it ever,
Yeah. I mean, and just like you said, I mean, I'm not a spiritual person myself, but there's something out there that I don't, that to me exists, but I don't feel the need to define it or write a book about it or something. But
I think that's what's cool about it is like it is something that you can't really put into words. It just is this feeling you have, you know. And I feel like maybe not everybody experiences something like that, but I hope that they do, because when it does happen, it's it's kind of like, it's like the idea of like forcing things versus like, and this is different than trying. I don't think of trying as forcing. I think of trying as effort.
Yeah.
That that you might fail at. Like, I'm going to try and I might succeed, but I might not. Forcing is like, the intention is to succeed here. Right. And through the aggressive nature of forcing sometimes you got to use force, but I mean this more philosophically, like forcing something oftentimes results in the opposite of what you're trying to achieve, and like some of the coolest, best things that have happened to me in my life, even my, meeting my ex-wife, like, we just happened to move into the same duplex, like 2 weeks apart. And the next thing we have a child together, and I still have like a great relationship with her, and all that stuff, and I feel super fortunate and grateful for that. But man, I mean, I think I'm like probably expanding upon this more than necessary, but I just think that like it was supposed to work this way with her and I, like, and instead of it, like we crossed paths at different points in our lives, but it was like, I always thought she was awesome, but like, I feel like, the now is the time, and the universe agreed.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, like I've made some probably, I guess in other people's eyes, some of the dumbest choices in my life, but a lot of those choices, I like felt something pushing me and kind of, nudging me to either make some sort of change or
like
do something
moving
specific.
From Charlotte, North Carolina to Berkeley on a whim?
Yes.
Something like, would that be an example?
It is, yeah.
So and I know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And I mean, even, meeting Zoe, it was just like, I mean, the odds of everything coming together and happening the way it did is just absolutely insane. Like people, essentially it boiled down to, I finished, college. I didn't go 4 years straight. I went 2 and then did kind of had my little wandering years and then did 2 more years. And then this is when NATO was bombing Serbia, and something was like, I need to go back there and connect with my roots.
Wow. Okay.
And I did all this work to try and figure out just even how to get there, because the airport was like, the runways were bombarded, and so it was just a lot of that kind of planning, and I like literally sold everything I had to fund my trip. I
see, for me, not to cut you off, but like I I don't think of myself as like a brave person, even though I am. I don't think of myself that way, but like that to me is like the bravery and courage to do that is like mind blowing to me.
See, the same thing though is like that's how I see you, and that's how I see myself. Like I don't see myself as brave at all. It was just something that I felt like I needed to do, and it wasn't even the whole idea wasn't even to go find the woman I'm going to marry. It was just like it was to go visit family because who knows how long they're going to be around.
Yeah, I mean, dude.
So basically it was just selling everything, funding this trip that was supposed to be 6 months, and it turned into like about 2.5, 3 years of flying back and forth.
Holy cow. Wow.
So, and I wrote a book out of it too. So it's published in Serbia, in the Serbian language. So unfortunately, unless you take lessons, you're not going to be able to read it.
Man, it will tell me exactly what it says.
I am thinking about translating it, like 20 something years later to see what it sounds like into English. So it started in English, and it was like 800 pages. But it, got published at around 200 pages, I think, in Serbian, and then, I
think I'm going to have you on my podcast to talk more about this because,
if you want to,
I do. We should.
Let's do it.
Let's figure it out.
And you can ask me all sorts of wacky questions about my life too.
Yeah, my brain's already going. So.
I generally hold things close to me, but if you ask me a question, I'm not the kind of person that will lie. Yeah. Just to save face.
You don't come across as that kind of guy.
So that's the way I sleep at night.
Yeah, dude.
So
whatever gets you there, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so cool.
All right, so this interview is about you, not me. So we'll that just came out. So one last question about you and Jodi.
Sure.
So I have to ask you about cheating at Monopoly. So she did mention this during her interview.
Yeah.
I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
And I got her point of view on cheating from Monopoly. So I'd like to get your point of view. Are you the person that usually wins, loses?
So we Monopoly, the game, as people are certainly familiar, has a version of Monopoly called Monopoly Cheaters. Okay, so this is not me cheating at regular Monopoly. This is an encouraged a game where cheating is encouraged, and the game happens to be Monopoly. And my son, Jodi's stepson Emmett, loves games, and he loves to win games, and so we only play it with him. And he wins every time. And he is super smart and hilarious and awesome. But so my playing style is like, I'm thinking about how I can cheat the whole time. But then when I try to actually pull the cheat off, I'm usually the one who gets caught. And it's because I'm like, this is called Monopoly Cheaters. Like, we don't try to cheat. Like, why are we playing this?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, I'm thinking, within the very early part of the game, how can I cheat right now? We just rolled the first dice. I'm already all right, cool. I'm going to try to cheat. Whereas Emmett, he kind of waits for... I've realized his strategy. And then we'll involve Jodi in this equation. But Emmett's strategy, he'll maybe... he'll get away with one, just to prove to himself that he can do it. But Monopoly is Monopoly. So it is not a short game, right?
Right.
And so he kind of waits till we sort of start to get fatigued by the game, and your attention starts to dissipate. Right. And you stop kind of looking for the cheat, and you're just when is this fucking gonna be over?
Yeah.
We've been playing this for 3 hours, kind of like this podcast. It just keeps going. But so I noticed the last time we played, right before we were all right, we're gonna finish, and you count up all your money, you count up all your properties, and you add it all together, and whoever has the most money wins. And the whole thing about Monopoly Cheaters is that in order to get away with the cheat, the next player has to roll their dice, and then you can say I cheated. But if they catch you cheating before the next player rolls their dice, then the sort of like cop of the situation, like catches you and you fail as the cheater, So I guess that detail is important. But anyways, he waits till we're all tired and want to stop playing. And our attention is like, you start looking around and he's like, okay, so I cheated this time. I did this, and then I did these three things. And you're just like, oh, okay. And then he's like, count all I win, and you're like, yeah, I guess you do. Jodi gets, she forgets the rules of the game often, and so like she will do a cheat wrong, or something, and crack Em and I up. It's like, wait, no, that's not what the cheat is. And she's like, oh, sorry, like I didn't read that right, or whatever it is, And so Jodi kind of her role is like, it's like Emmett and me trying to like best each other.
Yeah.
And then Jodi's just trying to kind of like, do her best to keep up with it.
Yeah.
But, she's not like really into board games, I don't think.
Yeah.
So, but it's a fun game. It's fun family time, and Emmett always wins.
Yeah. We do board games every once in a while,
Nice.
and my son and Zoe are extremely competitive.
Okay.
Zoe's like in a very passive way, so you never know when you're losing.
Yeah.
Where our son is just like in your face.
Yeah.
I'm winning.
The aggressive male tendencies, I suppose, right?
Yeah, he's very competitive that way.
Yeah.
And then there's like me and Sophia. We're just like, Sophia will get angry if she loses, or she's losing, and me, it's just like I could kind of care less.
Yeah.
I'm in it for the fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes, to keep things light, I'll throw the game a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
Stuff like that. It's just, I don't know.
You got to move it along, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty competitive, honestly. Like I didn't realize it until I started coaching my kid in sports.
Oh, I did that.
That I was actually, I knew I was competitive. I've always kind of weirdly looked at music slightly in a competitive way. I hate to admit it, but it's kind of been the thing that like I feel like was just like pushing me a little bit. It's like, well, I just got to like keep getting better at this, But anyway, like I sort of didn't, because I was so like not into sports for so long, like kind of thinking like, oh, like you can't be into like punk stuff and be into sports, which is like so dumb. But like I kind of surprised myself when I was like, yeah, sure, I'll coach, like how hard could it be? And then like, I'm like, like, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize how much I care about this, and so it sort of surprises me in that way.
Yeah, I coached soccer when the kids were little, and I never yelled at our kids, but the other coaches, other parents, and the referee generally got an earful.
Oh yeah, well,
so I wanted the kids to have fun, and when I saw that they weren't being done, when other teams were taking it, like their parents were taking it way too seriously, and they're telling their kids to like trip my kids and stuff and be more aggressive and all that. I'm just like, dude, they're like 8, it's like, chill out.
Youth sports is like such a crazy thing now.
Yeah.
And like there's so much pressure on kids, and like even like social media is like involved. My son played AAU basketball, and like dipping our toes into that world is like, you pay to play, and the refs are paid, and it's just like a different thing, than like playing at school or whatever. At least like like when you're younger, like playing a rec league or something, which is still super fun too. But yeah, man, like I shocked myself that I got so like into the competitiveness of the situation. And now when I watch, like, dude, so Dan from Big Life is a huge basketball fan. We go to Pistons games together often. And, you know, if they lose, which they did a lot of a few years ago, we both are just like so bummed, you know, just like, why are we so bummed about this? You know, like why does this matter to us? But it does, you know? So anyway, shout out Detroit Pistons.
Yeah. I grew up playing soccer, so I'm looking forward to, you know, getting to a Detroit City FC game.
Oh yeah, they're fun.
Yeah.
Have you not been yet?
No, I got to find someone to go with. So
I haven't been in a while, but they're pretty crazy.
Yeah, it looks like to me what soccer should be like.
It's
and not
trying
like when I watch the World Cup, I'm like, this is no longer soccer. It's not fun to watch. Yeah, that's a whole different thing that we could get into.
But there's also, they play at Royal Oak High School. There's soccer that happens, like professional.
Oh, really?
Semi-pro, I think there too, which is, you know, also fun and cool. So
cool. May check that out too.
You should.
Did want to mention that in high school, and actually I think at one point our club, our goalie was a drummer in a punk band. Okay. And he had a mohawk.
Dude, he's one of the best goalie on earth.
And, you know, and I played like center defense, so we had a good relationship there.
Right on, yeah.
So if you ever want to listen to they're Sub Society from out of San Diego, California.
Okay.
So
sweet.
They were full on DIY, like, you know, making their own little record covers and all that. So
yeah, awesome. Yeah, the punk jock, rare,
very rare,
but also typically insane. You know,
he was like the mellowest, kindest person I ever you know ran into in any sporting kind of scenario. So nice. it was definitely. But when he was on the field, he was a different person for sure.
Sure. The Mohawk guy.
Yeah.
You gotta live up to it.
Yeah, we had our little system set up to punish angry, terrible people on the other team. So it worked out well. All right, so I think we could probably wrap this up. We're like 3 hours.
Yeah, epic.
We're going to have to split this up into 3.
It's okay.
Maybe even 6. Who knows?
Dude, content, man. It's just more content for you.
Yeah. It's great as the conversation was.
Hell yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on. All right, so we'll wrap it up with, just, in my eyes, you've solidified, the notion that the Detroit area is a creative music powerhouse.
Yeah.
And, not just, through your era, but just kind of forced me to kind of look back through history and everything. And it's just absolutely insane. Like, most people think New York, LA,
right.
Which, they have their own, definitely. But there's like, nobody ever talks about this region. Like,
not enough, that's for sure.
Yeah. And it's just, coming up from, kind of being and growing up in different places and everything. It's just whenever anybody mentioned Detroit, it was always just the negative, and
sure.
It was just like
being from outside of Detroit. Absolutely. I can see that.
And it's just like here, I don't know, just since we came and, just visited to determine if, this was a possible place we want to move. It's like, you can immediately feel like that creative energy. Like, I mean, maybe not everywhere you go, but I mean, it just absolutely mind-boggling that this place exists and not more people are like, hey, I want to move there.
Sure. Well, it gets a bad reputation because there was a time that it was I mean, I remember being a kid and it was like, all right, we're going to go to a concert. And my parents would be like, okay, like, go to the concert, park somewhere close to the venue, and then when you're done, go back to your car and come home. You know? And, there's so much you can get into about why that's actually super fucked up, to like have to even think. And how, systematically, like the capitalist society that we live in has been, created to hold people back, essentially, and keep them, in these boxes or whatever. But, I will say that, like, there is something so special and unique about this area, where it has gone through such transformations, but the determination of the people that live here, you know, because first of all, we have to endure. I mean, the weather has got me real stressed. Okay, right now, climate change is like accelerating, and it is terrifying, and the people in power right now are really playing with a ticking time bomb, in my opinion, and it's something we all need to be really concerned with and doing our best to like push back against. But I digress. I will say, you know, we have to get through these brutal winters, you know, and then it's like hot as shit in the summer. And in both instances, I think most people are grumpy because of it. But not like let me restate that. I think most people who live here in the Midwest and in Detroit specifically, you know, are, despite those things, they use them to their advantage. You know what I mean? It's like it gets cold, so like, what do? You go in the basement and you play music. You know, you set up an art studio and you draw and you learn how to develop photos, or you know, whatever. Or even, you know, you build things, you know, you make spaces for people.
For us newbies, hey, let's go walk around in the pretty snow.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
I'm sure in a few years we'll be like,
you might not say that very long, but yeah, I mean, you know, it gets those types of things, like, you know, create opportunities to be creative, because you're not like, it's not as easy, you know, like it's like the reason people say that grunge happened in Seattle is because it rained all the time, you know, and so people had nothing else to do but be inside and entertain themselves somehow, you know, and I think that kind of similar thing happens here to a degree, you know.
Yeah, and definitely, and just that slightly harder life than Southern California,
well, right,
you know, where the temperature fluctuates 20 degrees throughout the whole year.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you could pretty much always go outside if you live in California.
Yeah.
You know? So, you know, and they have their own things to deal with.
Exactly.
But you know, I mean, yeah, like there's a magical kind of like thing here that, like, I don't know, man. Like, I think because relatively speaking, you know, the cost of living is still, you know, at least in like certain parts of the area, and not as much anymore, but you know, it at least like when I was coming up in like the Detroit music scene and stuff, like people were living in, you know, these giant houses, you know, and like Woodbridge and stuff, and their rent was like $500, you know, and like between 5 people, you know what I mean? Yeah. And they were playing in bands and paying their rent, like, you know, bartending basically, and like, you know, kind of like painting on the side, or like, you know, building, you know, stages and venues, you know, like that was like a whole thing. And like that kind of, I mean, you know, dude, like techno was invented here.
Yeah,
you know,
it's crazy.
Motown was invented here, you know, like we invent shit here, you know, like we don't just like, we make cars here, dude, you know, like you're welcome.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not for the car thing exactly, but you know what I mean? You're welcome for Stevie Wonder. You know?
Yeah. A lot of kind of things that don't get recognized have come out of here.
Or take it for granted, I think is the other thing too. You know. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not New York, it's not LA, it's not even Chicago, you know, but it is unto itself, like, that's why I'm still here, you know, like I've never felt like I wanted to leave, you know, because I feel like, you know, when I was in Thunderbirds and we were touring and trying to figure it all out, like we were asked many times to move to other cities to like try to do the band. And I was always like, I don't want to move to New York and be a small fish in a big pond. I'd rather be here. And not that I'm saying like I'm a big fish in a small pond, but like it just felt more possible here.
Yeah.
You could do it in a way where like you weren't going to like lose everything if it didn't work out.
Yeah.
You know?
And it sounds like there's, the music scene here was kind of like a support system where it wasn't so competitive with each other, and it was more of a big scene. There's always going to be that, but
I mean, the garage thing was huge here, and the White Stripes and all that, and so that was kind of its thing. And then there were other bands that I was more kind of like friends with that were like, we're not into that. We're into this other thing that we're doing, So, but it was healthy. It was healthy competition, and you need that to kind of like push you, and so I always looked at it that way, and I felt like, there was always a band, there's like bands right now. I'm just like, oh my God, they're so good. There's a band called Mod Lang from here. They're incredible. They're like the Beatles. They're so good. And it just blows my mind. They're so young. They're like 22 and they harmonize so great. And they're like, the whole look is cool. And they're stage presence and they're just great. They should be huge. Like if it was 1969, they would be so huge. But like, that's the kind of thing that I look at and instead of being jealous of, like maybe 10, 15 years ago, I would have been, but now that I'm at the age that I am, I just look at that and go, hell yeah. Yeah. Like keep this thing that existed before me and that I hope will exist after me. Keep it going, man. And I'm just like, I'll be there to cheer you on,
Cool. Well, that sounds like a perfect place to kind of wrap things up.
For sure.
A really, really, really good message, just to the next generations, which all for. It's not so much, I'm up there in ages and I'm in my 50s. So just, at this point, I'm just looking whatever my kids want, essentially how to vote and what they want makes way more sense to me than, whatever I may think of how the world should be, because it's not going to be my world in 20 years.
Yeah, that's what we're supposed to do. Unfortunately, people don't realize that, but I feel like our job here is to continue this experiment, and take care of each other and take care of where we are. And we're in a spot right now where that's not as important to people, maybe, or well. I think it's really important to most people, but unfortunately, the people that it's not important to are in power right now. Yeah. But everything shifts, and everything there. The paradigm shift, is that what it's called? I don't know. The weight of it will eventually sway it back the other way. Yeah. Because, what else are we going to do? Yeah. Like, just be like, whatever. And I think there's so much criticism, like, we should be more angry and this and this. And it's like, yes, I agree. But also, like, this is insane. Yeah. Like, what we're living through is insane. Yeah. And so I think some people are still just, like, trying to, like, recenter themselves from the shock of the last 2 years, and it's not over yet, and it won't be for a long time, unfortunately, in my opinion, but eventually it will be. And I guess like my way of kind of like staying grounded and staying sort of like committed to not being selfish, not just thinking about how does this affect me, because sometimes I will slip into that and I will have to catch myself. It's like, no. There's more. This is a bigger world out there. And I think that like one of the ways that I do try to like hold on to that is to like connect with my like musical universe. Yeah. And in a way where it's not like closed off to things that are like coming up behind where I am. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And so I still try to go to see shows and see new bands and like, you know, check out things there's a band from here called Ty.
Uh-huh.
They are so good. They sound like Devo.
Oh, cool.
And I saw them last summer, and like I can't get out to every show, you know, so I've seen them like one time. But the one time I saw them, I was like, this is so great, you know? And I bought their record at the show, and I don't know, just like, I feel like that's so important. You know, it's so important to just like continue to foster and cheer people on and get each other's backs. And
for sure.
Yeah, man.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up here. Just a reminder to catch Ryan's upcoming shows, especially the Locals Supporting Locals Fest in Berkeley coming up August 1st. And you're going to be playing at Big Life at Reware.
Vintage,
yeah. Are any of your other bands participating in that? Or?
No, just Big Life, but you know, that's enough of me for one show.
All right, cool. So check that out August 1st at Reware on 12 Mile. For more info about Ryan and everything he does, see the episode details for the links. This is Ramshackle United signing off. Let's keep building commonality block by block.